How do you do, neighbor? It's Berean Spirits time once again. The boys have gathered around, and they're ready for you. So join in, make comments, and study with the guys as they try to study as the Bereans did in Acts chapter 17. And now, here's the guys.
Good morning, and welcome to Berean Spirits. We appreciate you joining us today on this fine Thursday morning. We have a bit of a special show this morning because of the guy down below me. We have my dad with me. How you doing?
I'm doing okay today. I don't know what makes it special. So
I don't either, but well,
not very entertaining.
That's true. That's true. Well, he's preaching with the Rose Avenue congregation in Bellflower, California. And so we're glad he's come to join us today. And to offset the specialness of our guest this morning, we have Richard over here. Hi, Richard. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm with the Kearney Church of Christ.
I was getting there. There.
Of course, that's not Brookshire Church of Christ, is it?
Let's go with that.
Brookmead Church of Christ. Josh is with the Brookmead Church of Christ. Hey, the Apostle Paul had a thorn in the flesh. I got two.
Yeah,
that's original.
I am one. So
that's right. I got two thorn hills today. So I got two thorns right here. So
well,
there you
consider
go.
Yourself lucky.
Yeah.
Consider yourself lucky. Well, we have a good show planned today, I think. Maybe. We'll see. We're going to be talking about our entertainment choices. We have... I sent this to Richard a couple... this past week. This is Richard's favorite author and preacher. He says we should not be entertained by the sins for which Christ died. And so that will serve as the basis of our discussion this morning. I'm sorry. I guess I should clarify. We agree with that statement that John MacArthur made there. There are a lot of things that John MacArthur has said and believes and teaches that we would highly disagree with. So we do want to put that caveat out there. So I was just messing with Richard as far as the preacher thing there. But we do appreciate that comment that he had made about that. I think there's a lot of Hollywood seems to be intending to push buttons lately. I know Disney has been in the news a lot lately for their efforts to try and, you might say, brainwash children with their videos, their movies and TV shows and things, trying to fill children with the ideas of these transgenderism and homosexuality, and trying to normalize that within the minds of children and our society. Certainly, it doesn't it extends beyond that. There's a lot of immorality, ungodliness within the movies and TV shows that we might have access to. And so we're going to talk about those things and seeing what we ought to be looking for as Christians as far as trying to avoid those things, and how we might go about pursuing holiness even in our entertainment choices. So we're going to start with you, Richard, to see if you have a few things to share with us regarding our entertainment choices.
Well, I believe we listen. We all are looking
Good
to be
thoughts.
entertained.
Thank you, Richard. I'm just
kidding. I think we are all looking to be entertained from time to time. I mean, there are times that we need to rest, and the Lord made that clear. I think when He created everything, and 6 days He rested on the seventh day, and Jesus had after. In Mark chapter 6, when the apostles came from Jesus sending them out to teach, They came back in Mark 6 and verse 30, and he told his apostles to rest a while. So there's nothing wrong with rest, and we all need rest, and entertainment is usually how we do that. I don't know about you guys, but if I'm working on a lesson like last night, I was working on a lesson late, and I was close to finishing it, but I was like, oh boy, I really need a break. And so I had to get up for a while, and I had to do something completely different. I mean, I just had to get my mind off what I was doing, and I had to take a break. It's just I had to unfocus, I guess you'd say. And so, it didn't take long, 30 minutes. I just occupied my mind for 30 minutes on something else. And that's where we have, we can get into trouble sometimes. Now, I'm giving you a limited example, 30 minutes. But in 30 minutes, while I was waiting for my mind to kind of get back on track, there was things I looked for to entertain, to kill time. And I grabbed my phone, and there's a little golf game on here, and so I played a golf game, and then I flipped the TV on real quick to find out, just what was on. I was just a waste of time. So I mean, entertainment is something that we all look to do. I mean, that's just something that everybody does. And there's nothing wrong with that. The Lord expects that. But the choices that we make, that's how we're going to be judged. We have to make wise choices with this. And there is a danger when we use entertainment, when we choose the wrong type of entertainment. And I really believe 1 Corinthians 15:33 gets along with that. When it talks about bad company ruins good morals. Some people spend so much time like watching TV, that becomes their companion. That's company. And if that TV is showing something sinful, then, you can have your morals ruined by that. Now there's plenty of things people can do for entertainment that, that people, you can play sports, you can garden, you can bake, grill, cook, whatever. But there's other ways that the devil uses that he can get a hold of us. And that's where the danger is, like in reading books, watching movies, that old smartphone that everybody uses, music, those types of things. And that's where we need to be careful. We need to be really careful about the things that we are being entertained by, because of the danger that can happen to us. There's a real danger that it can corrupt our morals.
That's a good point. I think, as far as entertainment is concerned, we might think that, I'm not actively participating in it. So, because of that, it's okay that I enjoy this or watch this or, consume this particular media because I'm not involved in it, and so watching it is not a big deal. I I'm concerned. I'm sure y'all would agree. Seeing videos of a little toddler, maybe a 2 or 3 year old, doesn't know any better, obviously, but they're using curse words, and then the adults are just sitting around just laughing as if it's the funniest thing. Uh, and those videos are shown as entertainment. People are sharing those videos because they think they're funny. And I honestly, I think it's sad. Number one, obviously the child doesn't know any better, but I think the child is being taught something that they don't realize. But I think there's some dangers there for people in society in general.
Yeah, you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Josh, when you talk about that, what's even more disturbing is the number of likes and shares that a video like that gets. Wow. I mean, it's one thing for somebody to air their dirty laundry, if you will, but it's a whole nother thing to. I mean, those things will get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or even millions of views and shares with They'll go viral, as the expression goes. I mean, there's there's a lot to say when it comes to the idea of entertainment, and there's honestly a lot of different directions that we can go in dealing with the subject of entertainment. You have first of all, are you talking about wholesome versus unwholesome entertainment? And
Generally.
then you've got the question, what about managing wholesome entertainment? And then you have John MacArthur's quote that you mentioned at the beginning of this study. I mean, honestly, that's a discussion within itself. What about quote unquote Christian entertainment, and those kind of things, and making Jesus into entertainment? There's a lot of different directions you can go with this, because churches have turned worshiping Jesus into entertainment. But I know
Hmm.
that the focus of this lesson, I as I see where we're going, we're dealing with entertainment in general, and that deals with the first 2 points that I was addressing. Number one, you got to address, is it wholesome or is it not wholesome? And then the second question is, what about wholesome entertainment? And I think that second question is equally, if not more, concerning when you're dealing with believers. More than likely, the majority of the audience who listens to this uh, are Christians. They would believe in the Bible. You're hoping to influence others, and warning them against the bad type of entertainment, and then you just go into the statistics. You know, you, uh, when is the last time you watched a television show, a mainstream television show, where the couple were actually married as they engaged in relations? You, add to that profanity. When is the last time you watched a show for any length of time, whether it be a reality show or a comedy or a drama or whatever, where homosexuality was not entered or introduced in one form or another, and it has nothing to do with the plot of the show. You know,
Hmm.
it takes a show that otherwise would be good to watch, or or okay to watch, whatever word you want to use, but they have to inject ungodliness and immorality into everything. And that is the world. I know you mentioned at the beginning Disney. Disney used to be known for being somewhat of a wholesome family entertainment environment. Uh, Not anymore. I mean, they still do, but they still do to a degree. But you're always hearing in virtually every movie they make, they're trying to inject something. Hallmark, Hallmark movie channel that a, a lot of our wives watch,
Not
and
mine.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, the Hallmark movie. I mean, you could pretty much depend on wholesome movies, but in the last year or two, they have introduced some immorality, into some of their storylines and so on. So I mean, it is absolutely everywhere, and we have to be concerned about that. Proverbs 6 and verse 27. Let's put a verse on this. Can a man take fire into his bosom
Mm,
and his clothes not be burned? I
that-
I think that's a powerful verse that we need to give consideration to when we're looking at the ungodliness that is so prevalent in society. And eventually, I want to get to this eventually in the lesson, but I won't deal with it until you're ready for it. I did a sermon on the book of Ecclesiastes a couple of years ago, dealing with Solomon and Ecclesiastes chapter 2, and in verse number 8. And this is where Solomon's searching for the meaning of life. And he makes the point, I gathered for myself silver and gold and the special treasures of the kings and the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, the delights of the sons of men, and musical instruments of all kind. You got entertainment. Solomon sought wisdom or meaning in entertainment, and like everything else, he found that it's vanity, and that's really the bottom line. So, but before we get done today, I have like 3 or 4 rules to give consideration to when we think about entertainment as Christians. But anyways,
Okay.
that's some general concerns that I have when we're looking at it. So I'll pass it back to you all.
I like that verse in Proverbs there. Within the context, he's talking about, keep yourself from an evil woman, lest really she capture you, or nor let her capture you with her eyelids. Don't desire her beauty in your heart, things like that. And then can a man take fire into his bosom?
Yeah.
That's very closely related to what Richard pointed out in 1 Corinthians 15. If you don't think that what you watch or read or listen to on the radio has an impact upon you, your head is in the sand. We've already mentioned Disney has come out and said they're trying to influence people in regard to the transgender and homosexuality stuff. They're trying to infiltrate the minds of children. They're starting young. Back in 1989, I wasn't born yet, but there was a book that was, I think it was 1989, there was a book released, and I'm kind of blanking on the name here for a second. But the premise of the book was that how America is going to overcome their fear of homosexuality in the 90s. And I've not read the book, but from the ideas that I've heard from it is, they'll start small with, making jokes about gay people in shows, and haha, that's funny, that's a good joke, and then they'll start having gay characters, and they'll slowly infiltrate it in, and it'll get to the point where it becomes normal to you.
Yeah, and
you're
Joshua,
used to
just
seeing
add to
it.
that. Just add to that, and you can keep going. But just remember, the gay characters are the smart ones.
Yeah.
That they're the ones that solve the problems. So just
So, I mean, all that to say, the point, if you don't think that media is trying to influence you, you're wrong. And if you don't think that media has an influence on you, whether the sin that you're involved in or the sin that you're consuming is affecting you in some way, you're lying to yourself, because it does affect you and it does change what's in your heart. What you consume becomes who you are. And so if we consume immorality and ungodliness, that becomes a part of who we are. If we consume righteousness and godliness and purity, that becomes who we are. So this is an important discussion, important thing for us to reflect on, because what we're feeding ourselves from an entertainment standpoint is going to go a long way to determine, number one, how spiritual we can be, and it'll open the door for a lot of immorality to enter into our minds and our hearts if we're not careful. Richard, did you have another thought here as far as do we have some principles, biblically speaking, that we can apply
Well,
as far
I
as
think I think that's what your dad wanted. Thomas wanted to get to, but can we? I want to share Mark's comment that he brought in, if you don't mind. He says it used to be more common to warn our children about harmful inputs, and it seems recently has been compared to censorship or hate speech if a parent tries to limit certain inputs for their children or themselves. Parents are even rebuked by educators for objecting to certain traditionally inappropriate materials for children in schools. We used to teach the song, Be Careful, Little Eyes, What You See, and not so much anymore in society. And I think, and he's right, the problem I think comes down to is that many Christians, uh, and I'm usually these are the ones who are immature in Christ, those who are have are still putting off the carnal living. Uh, they underestimate the devil and his means of trying to corrupt them. And underestimating the devil is he's our adversary. And if you cannot afford to underestimate him. And when you think about some of the things that he wants to do, I mean, don't you think he would want to come into the home? Why wouldn't he want to ruin the home environment? I mean, that just makes perfect sense. And what's the best way for him to get into the home, if not through the means of entertainment? I mean, you're not going to let him through the door. I mean, if he comes to the door in a white shirt that says, Grievous Wolf on it, with in black letters on his shirt, you're not going to let him in the door. You a false teacher. But if he comes in sneaky fashion, like a robber in the night, he comes in through the TV or through your music or through the computer or through the books that you're reading, then, he can get in and he can start working on you. It gets back to what Thomas said about the fire in your bosom and getting burned. That's his goal. And so we have to understand as Christians, we have a goal too. And that's stated in Philippians chapter 4 and verse 8. When Paul said, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise. And then he said this, think about these things. And this is really important that those who are spiritually minded in the church, that they really preach hard about this to those who are weaker in the faith. They have to understand if they want to make it to the point where they are more mature in the faith, then they're going to have to guard themselves against the devil. They're going to have to think about these things because the devil wants to distract you. His whole means is to distract you from thinking about good things. And so the best way for him to do that is to get in the home and corrupt your entertainment.
That song that Mark had referenced there, "Be Careful Little Eyes What You See." I remember singing that when I was a little kid in Bible class. What age do we reach where that no longer applies? You've got the ratings, like rated R. You can't see it unless you're under 17, at least without a parent there to buy the ticket for you, right? So if I'm 17, I'm allowed to see these things now. If I'm 13, I can watch PG-13 movies and all the immorality in PG-13. Well, I'm old enough now.
Yeah,
I think we.
If a child is can't see it, then why should an adult see it?
Right. I remember hearing a gospel preacher one time dealing with the movie ratings. He said if it says PG-13 on it, that PG means profanity guaranteed. So,
the thing that amazes me is last week's show was on feminism, and YouTube was offended by it, and they took it off. Now, I can go to YouTube. When I put a video on YouTube, I have to check a box that says that it's okay for all ages to watch this. And, that's what, we should be able to do. But you can go on YouTube and very well, if you've been on YouTube, there's sin abounds. You can find all kinds of sin on YouTube. There's all kinds of things that shouldn't be on there that YouTube allows on. But what do they take off? They don't want to hear the truth. Morality. That's right. And that tells you everything you need to know about the devil and his work. The devil's real. If you try to think that the devil's not real, you're fooling yourself. And he's out there and he is working on us. And so we have to be careful that we do concentrate on those things that the Lord wants us to concentrate on, and don't give the devil a footing. Like going back, Tom said, You take a little fire in your bosom, you're going to get burned. You can't play with fire.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Don't forget that Satan. He's described in 1 Peter 5 as walking about like a roaring lion,
Yeah.
seeking whom he may devour.
And you know, who do the lions usually go after when you
The
see them
Oh,
weak.
oh,
hunting?
they always they go after the weak. They go
Yeah.
after the stragglers. I mean, it's an easy meal. That
Right.
that's what they're looking for, and that's exactly right. But mentioning that, Richard, sometimes we as a Christian society, and when I say those who are Christians, we as parents and sometimes churches, in what they teach and so on, we haven't done as good of a job as we should keeping our children from being the stragglers. That's the sad reality, because we haven't prepared them. We haven't prepared them for the world, and a lot of times we've turned a deaf ear to stuff. I mean, how many parents are there? Well, yeah, it is PG-13, so it must be okay. And 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 also, let's suppose somebody does watch a PG-13 movie or whatever. Are you watching it with your children? And are you taking the time to teach them after it is watched? Are you going to make a moral lesson out of this? Talk about what was wrong with what you saw. I think there's something to be said about family watching entertainment together
Yeah.
from that standpoint. And obviously there are some things that is just not worth watching at all. And at what point do you draw the line where it's not worth watching? So you think about that. One other thing I just wanted to just real quickly throw in, when we've talked about various avenues of influence, and the home has been mentioned. One of the other challenges we have in our entertainment is they oftentimes have undermined the role of the father and the role of the husband in entertainment, the responsibility that God gives the man of the house. That's undermined, and oftentimes the father's the one that's perceived as the buffoon. The children are the smart ones, or those types of things, or the father is overbearing and cruel and all those types of things, and that's the way that's presented, and it's just another area of concern.
Mm-hmm. I would say, though, we do need to be careful as to what we are watching. There are shows and TV shows and movies and books and songs on the radio that glorify sin. I think about, just country music, talk about, getting drunk and can't wait to take her home kind of thing. You're glorifying sin with those songs. I think about these horror movies, like the slasher type horror movies. They're intending to glorify that character. He's technically the bad guy, but is he really? Because, the whole movie's about him, going on these rampages, slashing people and all that. You're glorifying the sin as you're taking part. These movies are glorifying that sin. I think there's a difference between these slasher type movies where, you've got the evil guy who's, that's the whole reason you're watching is because he's there, versus another movie where there's a murder at the beginning and they're, going through the process to try and bring that person to justice. I think there's a difference in those kinds of things, and we need to make sure that we're not actively involving ourselves in things that are trying to glorify the things for which Christ died, and glorifying the things that break God's heart. I've read, I saw a quote a while back saying that the reason why Hollywood keeps putting so much into their movies that violate our Christian morality is because we keep spending our money to go see it.
Mm. Let me ask you this. Consistency for me is very difficult.
I agree. I agree.
because I had my son up here. We were studying one night, and I was thinking about this, and I asked him this question. I said, some of these horror flicks that I've seen advertised, and I don't like that. I wouldn't watch it if I wasn't a Christian. They don't appeal to me. But see somebody get stabbed
I
in the
think it's
chest
kind of dumb.
or somebody get their head cut off, it's gross to me. But I said these things, and I said, you think a Christian should be looking at it? And he's like, oh no, no. And I asked him this then. I said, okay, why? And he's like, well, that's murder. I'm like, okay. I said, but I like the Indiana Jones movies. And I go, there's a scene in Indiana Jones where a guy comes out with this big saber and he's whipping it around, and Indiana Jones looks at him with disgust and he just pulls out his gun and shoots him. He's dead. And I said, what's the difference? Of course, my son didn't have anything to say, but I was sitting there thinking, if I am watching that movie, most people would say, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. But if I'm watching that movie with someone who likes horror flicks, and then they come and I tell them it's a wrong thing, Christians shouldn't watch it, and then we start watching Indiana Jones and they see me being entertained by this, they're going to be thinking you're inconsistent. And I'll give you another.
He's the good guy, Richard.
I know, but let me give you an example. Another example. Some of these, and I don't like the music, but there's this modern rap music. I can't remember what they call it, hip hop or something like that, where the lyrics are horrible, and it's not just in there.
To before the show, come on.
Yeah, it's not just in that one. I mean, there's the lyrics are just things that Christians should never hear. Mm-hmm. But now I like country music, and I remember driving down the road and little Barbara Mandrell came on the radio, and I'm singing with her, and the song is "If Loving You Is Wrong, I Don't Want to Be Right," and I like the tune, and I'm sitting there, and then it hit me, man, this is presenting a bad idea. But I mean, you see consistency, and so while we're sitting here and we're talking about this, and I think anybody that has a remedial idea what the Bible teaches is going to know that we shouldn't be entertained by sin. Consistency is an issue. I mean, that's something that we all need to work on, because that can be really difficult. It gets into the, sometimes we decide something's a big sin and sometimes a little sin, but God doesn't see big sins and little sins, and we all recognize that. And so we have to train our mind to think like God and not like man. And so we can't just say, well, this is a little sin, so it's okay to be entertained by it.
I think we do need to strive for consistency. Because like I don't understand, the whole horror movie genre. I mean, there's a couple movies that I've seen that are somewhat decent, but in general, like I don't understand the appeal to going to see these slasher movies. So it'd be easy for me to try and point out, well, that's not right. We probably shouldn't be watching that. But am I, when it is something that I do like, and you mentioned the Indiana Jones there. When it's something that we do like, are we applying the very same standard to what it is that we're watching? We tend to be a little more lenient when we like it, and we're a little harsher when we don't like it. I think Richard's right. We need to learn to apply a standard with consistency.
God's standard.
Right. God's standard with consistency to determine what we should and should not be partaking of.
Right. I like comedy. The interesting thing about when you think about what one of the purposes of reality or of entertainment is, it's to escape reality for a little while. To escape the rest your mind. And you think about a slasher movie. A slasher movie's it's intense. Which, by the way, that's why they watch it, is because of the intensity. It plays to the prime to the prime emotion of fear. And all of these, they're about prime emotions. But the point is, when I want to be entertained, I want to escape the realities of what's going on for a little while. That doesn't mean you dismiss your standards. And that's the challenge. You can't throw your standards away. You have to maintain your godly standards when you pick what you want. But comedy can get pretty bad.
Oh, yeah,
Or
yes.
let me rephrase that. Comedy can get very bad.
Yeah.
And
Everything can get
yeah,
really bad. You know,
and
I
that's the
was sitting
point.
there, the singer Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of time I can't hear well anymore, but
Huh?
yeah, but Lady Gaga had a song. I think it's called Poker Face. And I like that part, pup, 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 poker face, And I'm sitting there, walking through the house,
Please
pup,
don't
pup,
start
pup,
singing it.
poker face. And my son's like, "You ever look the lyrics up to that?" And I'm like, "No." And he goes, "Maybe you ought to go check it out." So I went and checked it out. I'm telling you, that's one of the filthiest songs that I mean, it should not be allowed anywhere. And so, you know, we we really also to add to this, we really need to pay attention to the things we're being entertained by because my son heard me singing it, and what if it was somebody who didn't know me heard me singing it, and they knew the lyrics? I mean, what are they going to think about me? And so that's something we really got to be careful about with other people. Is what are they seeing when they see us being
Yeah.
entertained?
Yeah, I wrestle with that myself because when I listen to music, or no, I don't listen to a whole lot of music, that is, but sometimes I'll hear a song, whether it's in a movie or whatever, or maybe at the store, it's playing on the speaker at the store. I generally just like the sound of it. There's a lot of songs where I've heard and I really like the sound of it. And then I was like, man, I like this. And then I start to pay attention to the words, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's not very good
And why
song.
do they have to?
Uh,
The beat's good, the song's good. Why do
yeah,
they have to have bad words in it? Why
I'll
do
tell
they
you
have
one
to
thing.
convey a bad idea? I don't understand. It would be a hit if it would be a hit song if they would just do it right.
I'll tell
But
you one thing. You specifically mentioned Lady Gaga there. She's got a lot of songs that are really catchy as far as their tune are concerned. And one that I really like as far as the sound of it is concerned is the song Born This Way. I just like the way it sounds, but then when you start paying attention to the words, she's talking about the LGBT, XYZ, LMNOP, whatever that is, movement anymore. Basically, that we're just born this way, and so this is the way we're made, and we can't help who we are, that kind of thing. Um, Obviously, a very immoral message there, but we need to be paying attention to the songs, and of course, with the country music songs, I used to listen to it a lot, but there's one particular song, "God is great, beer is good, and people are crazy." I mean, okay. I like the sound of the song, but that's not a very good message to really be filling our hearts with. I'll pass it over to Dad for a second, but in a second to get those guidelines that he was describing there in a second. But I want to just think for a second about a principle found in the scripture, Proverbs 4. We've already mentioned Proverbs 6. Proverbs 4 and verse 23 says, "Keep your heart with all diligence, for from it springs the issues of life." The point is, we need to guard our hearts. Our hearts are precious uh, because it determines who we are, and it's going to determine where we're going as far as eternal life is concerned. And so we need to guard it. We need to recognize that it's under constant attack. Satan wants to destroy our hearts. Again, 1 Peter 5 and verse 7, he's walking about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. He wants to destroy you. And so we need to guard our hearts from immorality, and we need to limit to the very best of our ability our exposure to sin. We can't help the people that we work with. I can't help what I see on a billboard driving down the road. I can't help, what I hear, the person in the checkout line next to me says, but I can help what I'm watching on TV. I can help the books that I'm reading. I can help the music that I'm listening to. And by the way, Christians have less of an excuse now than they ever have, because for just a few dollars a month, you can get a streaming service on your cell phone that allows you to choose what kind of music you want to listen to. And so you get to choose, I'm going to listen to the music that has that's not immoral. I'm going to avoid the songs that have immorality in it. There's streaming services, and there still are shows and movies and things that have some worthwhileness to them, that you can find. I tend to like to rewatch all of the old Disney movies back from the 80s, 90s, and such, back before they seemed to get super crazy. You can find things to watch that are not, filled with a ton of immorality. And so we have less of an excuse now than we ever have, because we have so much control over what we consume. And it's so important that we guard our hearts to protect ourselves from the devil, and in a sense kind of insulate ourselves
And sear
from
our
the devil to
conscience.
the very best of our ability.
And sear your conscience to it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
Right.
danger. I actually heard a Christian singing one time, that song, I'm on the highway to hell. I actually heard a Christian singing that song, and I was like, how can you sing it? How can those words come out of your mouth? But they just seared their conscience to it, and
That's
that's
another one of the songs that I think sounds great.
it. Does
But
have great. It is.
the
Yeah.
message of it. I just don't listen to it because I don't like the message of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, go ahead, Dad, with your guidelines.
Okay, yeah. And these are just some points that I brought out. This is from a lesson that I presented again, it was on the book of Ecclesiastes back a couple of years ago, and I just made these observations about the vanity of entertainment and some rules to consider. Number one, and we've talked about this. Understand that entertainment is not wrong within itself. That's the thing to understand. But what rules can you follow? Number one, we've talked about this. Is it wholesome entertainment? And of course, that's the number one rule that we've been dealing with throughout this. Some other things to think about is how much time am I spending in it? I think that's an equally important thing. When Jesus told his disciples to rest for a while,
Yeah.
it was for a while. The implication there was, okay, when you get done, get back to work. Number 3, be concerned if it causes me to neglect other duties, which kind of ties into the amount of time. But I do need to look at that, from the standpoint of, especially think about this with family responsibilities. As a parent, am I pawning off the television or Disney Channel or whatever on my
Video
kids,
games.
so that I can do something else, as opposed to those. And number 4, has entertainment become an idol to me? And just think about the areas of this. People that take a genre of movie or a certain group, like say Marvel. Marvel has how many movies out there? And there are people that will watch every movie that Marvel's ever done. Okay, whatever. But the thing is, they know it like the back of their hand, but they can't quote a verse. on what you need to do to be baptized. Those types of things. And when you think about entertainment as an idol, don't forget the other areas. I'm going to get on to Joshua here. Sports. Yeah, I mean, entertainment comes in a lot of forms. We've talked about music, television, movies. What about sports? Is sports entertainment? What
We've
about
gone to meddling now, so no.
yeah? What about some type of a hobby? I love photography. Hobbies can become an idol. Don't let it become an idol. So those are just a few things that I throw out, things to consider. I'm sure you could add more to them, but those were some suggestions that I made in that particular lesson. So, anyways, that's my thoughts.
I'd like to add a couple, if I could.
Sure.
One would be, could this lead someone else to sin? And another might be, is this going to hurt my influence in the work of the Lord? And then one other point might be is, would Jesus enjoy partaking in this entertainment with me? And that's a harder one to be able to make a decision on, because you're going to have to know the mind of God, and you're going to have to spend a lot of time and study learning about Jesus so that you can make the proper judgment. Now, a young convert might think Jesus would, he might make the wrong decision on that early on, compared to what he would make later as a more mature Christian. So that's again, for anyone who's listening, that's more motivation to learn the Word of God so that you can make good judgments on things like this.
One of the things I think we need to appreciate is the fact that sin, by its very nature, is corrupting. And I think we can all agree that engaging in sin is corrupting to ourselves, but even being exposed to it is corrupting. Think about when you were younger and you knew that certain words were wrong, and you kind of hear it on the TV. You're kind of like, now we can hear them without even flinching, right? It's because sin's corrupted us in some way. And so we need to be aware of the corrupting influence of sin to the point that I want to distance myself as far from it as I can. That's called holiness.
Yeah, you don't want to sear your conscience.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And going to Richard's point about, I like that last point, would I be comfortable doing this with Jesus? How many of us have watched a movie and walked away thinking about how wonderful that movie was? Oh, this is a good movie. And then you invite your Christian friends over to watch it with you.
And then you're
and all of a sudden there's that scene, or there's those words that you didn't catch when you were watching it by yourself, or with your family or whatever, and we can desensitize ourselves to those things. Again, the 2 Corinthians 2:11, we are not ignorant of his devices. Satan will take advantage of us. And I tell you right now, subtlety is one of the best devices he has. I mean, it's not, like you said, it's not the flashing sign. It's not the red suit and the horns and the tail, knocking on your door, or the shirt, evil present. It's dressed in a business suit.
Well, he only changed 3 little letters. He added 3 letters in the Garden of Eden. That's not
one word.
Not surely die. That's it. So that's pretty subtle. That's pretty subtle right there.
Yeah.
You can change the whole meaning of a command with just those 3. Just with three letters. It's amazing.
Yeah,
and that's all he's got to do. That's all he has to do.
Yeah, and even in our language, you move a comma from one word to another, you can change the meaning of the word.
Yep.
Let's eat, Grandma.
Or phrase.
Let's eat, Grandma.
Good point. That's good.
Anyway, As I think we already put Mark's comment up on the board, but he had pointed out that the devil is going to try and, repackage evil to make it pretty. You think about alcohol commercials. They always show the people having a great time. They always show, the fun times that are having, but they don't show that guy that wrecks his car sitting in front of my apartment the other night.
But you're supposed to drink responsibly. That's
It
what
doesn't-
they
But
say.
it doesn't get any better than this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or those wonderful Clydesdales.
As they bring in a case of beer, you're supposed to drink
Mm-hmm.
responsibly, him. I like that.
And the point is, we need to see through the devil's sham. And we need to learn to see evil for what it is, see sin for what it is, and learn to avoid it, and really get to the point where we want nothing to do with it because our hearts have become purified, and we've drawn close to God, and we delight in the things that are holy, as Richard mentioned in Philippians 4 and verse 8. Meditate on the things that are good and noble and pure, and on and on and on. All right, any last thoughts before we close?
I just think that, entertainment is something that we really take for granted. And that's the front. I think that the devil has chosen, the mechanism that the devil has chosen to try to attack so many of us is through entertainment. And we really need to be more awake toward the devil's use of it.
Yeah, and that's the point. Be alert. You can't avoid the world. You can't avoid the world, but you can avoid letting the world come in you.
Yep.
I meant to make a comment there on what Richard said, but I forgot what I was going to say. So
I was talking about being awake.
Something like that. Anyway, we appreciate you joining the show this morning. We look forward to being able to for you to join with us again next Thursday at 11 Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, or 8 o'clock Pacific time, and whatever in between or outside of that.
And we want to thank Thomas for being on, because it is 8 o'clock where he's at. So we thank him for that.
And he was up anyway. Anyway, appreciate
I've
him
been
being
up
on
for
with
3
us.
hours.
Yeah. If you'd like to contact us, you can look at the website, bereanspirits.com. You can figure out how to contact us there. There's also Facebook and I think YouTube as well. I'm not as familiar with YouTube. You can contact us at the Brookmead page on Facebook, the Southside page on Facebook, and the Kearney page on Facebook. We'd be glad to help you and answer any questions you may have. Look forward to our next study, and look forward, in the meantime, we hope that you can search the scriptures daily with Berean spirits.
Well, folks, that's all for today. Don't worry. Lord willing, the guys will be back next week for another Bible study on Berean spirits. Until then, let the guys hear from you. Drop them some email at bereanspirits@gmail.com. They'd love to hear from you. Until next time, let's keep studying that Bible.